Gingras, Thompson, and Walks, a statewide team of personal injury lawyers getting you the justice you deserve. Call 855-954-1186 for a free consultation.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Here's what you need to know in southeast Wisconsin. Wildfire smoke has spread to Waukesha and Milwaukee, resulting in an air quality advisory in eastern Wisconsin. The smoke is expected to be at its worst today and tomorrow, with people with heart or lung disease, older adults, and children being most affected. It's advised to limit outdoor activities during the alert. Bold action is needed to sustain growth. That was one of the messages out of Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson's State of the City address yesterday. Johnson highlighted achievements in the local economy while acknowledging concerns about crime and reckless driving.
There's no magic solution to urban crime and violence. The causes are complex. The solutions are complex too.
The address also touched on supporting changes in gun laws and support for a sales tax. For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
The law firm of Gingras, Thompson, and Walks has a track record of making life-changing positive differences for their clients. $5.25 million to a woman who suffered brain injuries and her husband passed away when struck by a drunk driver. $1 million to 3 different individuals injured by drunk drivers. $1 million settlement to a man injured in a motorcycle accident. Call Gingras, Thompson, and Walks. 855-954-1186.
Calling Gingras, Thompson, and Walks. GTWLawyers.com.
Get ready to dominate the field like never before. Get to Soccer World in Brookfield. They have a great selection of shoes, apparel, and accessories to help kick your game into high gear. Soccer World's team of soccer experts have over 38 years of experience in the retail and soccer market. From cleats to shin guards, jerseys to coaching equipment, they'll help you stay ahead of the game. Plus, look to Soccer World for all your team business needs. Soccer World, 12615 West North Avenue in Brookfield, or online at soccerworld.brookfield.net.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Gary from Sussex. Hey, Gary.
Whose birthday is it? Is it both you guys' birthday or is it Dom's or Mike's?
It's my birthday today. Mike's was 2 days ago.
I'm going to sing a happy birthday, and I'm going to sing it the right way. Happy birthday to you, Mr. President of his radio station and his sidekick.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app.
Miss our conversations on air? Join the discussion on our social media channels. Find Civic Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find social media for specific shows as
well. Unless there's goat cheese on it. Pine nuts.
Wow, someone went to private school. They knocked down the original building, which was just a building, and then they built an actual castle. And it is gorgeous. Every time a friend of mine from out of town comes, I take him there because I'm that much of a podunk hick.
Magic people, voodoo people. Oh, I like this one.
This is The Prodigy.
The Prodigy. Okay. Yeah. Jane, how do you rate this one?
Oh, I'm having a ball.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Have you thought much about how you personally are going to deal with the onslaught of AI in the next election? 844-967-2789. You know, in the same way in 2008, all of a sudden there was social media and Facebook and things to deal with in the that election. The 2024 presidential race is going to be the AI election. And there's very little evidence so far that there's going to be any regulation ahead of time, whether that's through laws and the government or self-regulation from any of the tech companies. And so it feels like it's just going to be on our shoulders to start to like figure out what is true, what is not true, And I'm just curious if you've thought about this and how you even deal with it today with misinformation when you are trying to get the news. 844-967-2789. That's 844-96 party. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin on this very smoky Tuesday. Holy moly, Greg Bach. Can you breathe when you're outside right now, or is it a little hard?
Well, we're coming from outside. Just kidding. No, yeah, this is weird.
It is weird, right?
It's because it's not like it's misty. It's you feel like you're walking through something.
Yeah, like walking out into the yard today to walk the dog. I was like, well, it smells like a campfire, and it is hazy. So make sure you are checking the air advisories in your location, and maybe spend less time outside if you don't have to be outside, because I don't think this is good for anyone, let alone if you have any health conditions or asthma or the like. But Greg, what do you think? How do you think you're going to deal with all the AI disinformation that's coming down the pipe?
First of all, I just have this idea that if you're honest enough to tell me it's made with AI, I'm gonna be like, well, I don't believe it to begin with. Like, I don't know. I won't trust it. I don't feel and it's not the robots are taking over, or as Mr. Rogers says, the robots. It's such a technology in its mass infancy. I should say it's to the masses in its infancy, that before it could ever become trusted or something that's not almost laughable in its design, you're going to be like, it's going to be a few years before I'm like, all right, I'll trust you. I want to hear it from a
But isn't the point that you won't be able to recognize it as AI?
Well, yes, but nowadays no one will shut up about how much it's AI. They're like, oh, we made this commercial with AI. I'm like, yeah, that was a political commercial. That's scary. You know what I mean? Like, no one's at this point. I haven't come across anyone digging up a thing of like, oh, this ad or this commercial or this news story is totally AI generated, and nothing's like, there was no submersible.
Fair enough. So I'm bringing this up because there was the Aspen Ideas Festival in Colorado happened, and this was a big topic there. And it basically is talking about how artificial intelligence and generative bots like ChatGPT are basically, as of right now, poised to upend modern American politics. And it's kind of the 2.0 version of what happened when social media reset the playbook in 2008. And of course, for the doomers out there, this is a huge red flag as far as what does this mean for democracy. And it's like the idea that the campaigns that could happen, like could come out, are going to be full of false information for anyone that can even generate it and like every side, every grassroots, every politician is going to have access to be able to use generative AI to do harm to their opponents, because there is now going to be, stick with me, new open source technology. One's been released by Meta, and it's known as, this feels like the conversation where we're talking, this is a couple weeks ago, we were talking about weird names.
Yeah.
It's LLAMA, but it's capital L, lowercase a, capital M-A. So llama?
I want a llama.
But if it's, I always, from my Spanish, the little Spanish I took in high school, a double L I think is
yeah.
Yana. So is it Yama? Yeah. I don't know, but there's
me and my Yama. Me and my Yama.
There's a new, but it makes it possible for anyone in their basement to create far-reaching and fake influence campaigns.
That doesn't sound good.
I know. And so these different people at this Ideas Fest in Aspen, Ron Klain, who is a former chief of staff to President Biden, said that campaigns are going to need to shift their approach to counter AI. He pointed to how Ron DeSantis and the RNC have already used fake images to attack Biden so far. And so like what they think they know they need to do is just like get Biden out there and like connecting with people directly. But I'm trying to think for you personally, you at home listening, like, how do you navigate this? Like, what do you even do today? And we've kind of talked about this before, sort of like what news do you trust? But this takes it to an even greater level of how do you manage to try to navigate the news cycle and understand what's real and what's not and what's true and what's not. Do you just have like your sources that you trust, or like what are the checkpoints that you've already put in place to like be able to verify? Because like I don't even know for myself. Like I have the things that I check, and this is kind of the balance I feel like sometimes with like the criticisms of mainstream media is that they're owned by bigger companies and they have an agenda and blah 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 and private equity and yada. But also like they also have to go through like most of them rigorous fact checking. Like the New York Times, I know when Dan Shafer, who is going to be joining the show at 10:30 today from the Recombobulation area, when he had his piece published in the New York Times last fall, he was talking about like the editing process was intense.
Yeah, exactly.
With the New York Times. So like some of these publications that like their reputation, they live and die by their reputation. You can trust that there is also like a fact checking process versus just things that get released by anybody who has access to a social media platform. And so I'm really interested in hearing from you on if you feel prepared for this next election cycle and what kind of information, misinformation, and disinformation is going to be thrown at you. 844-967-2789. We got Tony Zimmerman saying a lot of things on our Facebook live stream, which you are always welcome to watch. Watch us, in addition to listen to us, on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, which you can find at As Goes Wisconsin. Tony Zimmerman saying, very surprised Trump didn't claim the new audio about top secret documents wasn't fake and generated by some AI.
Well, now he's going to. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, Tony, way to give him some tips. But that's actually a good point, because now it becomes the both sides of you can create something out of nothing, but also something that actually happened. You could like, well, that's actually fake. Like, who's going to be the arbiter of like what is real and what is not?
I mean, that's the thing. No one can be, because Dolly Parton. Let's just go back to her, because honestly, like it's the thing is, if I say it, someone's gonna say, "Well, you're a liberal snowflake. Of course, you're gonna say that's fake." Or if it's someone on the right, we're not gonna trust them. So who is trusted enough to do that?
I know.
Walter Cronkite's dead. We can't trust him. He's dead. And most people don't know who I'm talking about right there.
No, I bet most of the listeners who are listening to the show live right now definitely know who Walter Cronkite is.
I'm talking to our Zoomers right now who are listening.
I don't know how many Zoomers listen to this show. I got to be totally honest. I like whenever I look at what I can tell on social media from demographics who follow As Goes Wisconsin, it's like mostly millennial, Gen X.
Yeah.
Some boomer. I've yet to reach the Gen Z, unless they're super into politics, I've realized.
Yeah, totally.
But we would love to hear from you. I got a couple more things from Joe and Tony that I want to read, but would love to hear from you of how are you planning to deal with the upcoming onslaught of AI? And does some of it just want to make you just tap out entirely? I'd be like, I'm going to trust my gut instinct. I'm just going to keep getting news where I get news from and not worry about the noise. But it's coming, whether we like it or not. And big tech is only dialing back its misinformation policy. Like this is YouTube, Twitter, like across the board, things that were put in place around COVID and election denial and stuff. A lot of those policies are getting rolled back. And so what are you going to do? Because you can't just wait for Congress to do something. We can't just wait for big tech to necessarily regulate itself. but I would love to hear from you. 844-967-2789. And we'll end on this before we go to a break. Joe McClear says on the Facebook live stream, I just asked ChatGPT, how should I deal with AI in the 2024 election? It said, don't worry, we'll take good care of you, future human battery.
Ooh, the Matrix.
All right, we got to take a break, but we would love to hear from you on this topic. 844-967-2789. How are you going to deal with AI during this next election? 844-96-PARTY. We will be right back.
Baby, let me go so close to the old ground. The tears will always have wet. Eyes are dry, but I'll serve. Father, shall you let me go for
$9 million to members of a family injured due to the negligence of a truck driver and his employer. Call Gingras, Thompson, and Walks today. 855-954-1186.
all into win. Gingras, Thompson, and Walks. GTWLawyers.com.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Wisconsin's manner of funding local government is nearly singular in the country. That cheese stands alone, if you will. It hasn't been working in Milwaukee. It hasn't been working in Rhinelander. It hasn't been working in La Crosse, Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha, Racine. I don't care what you pick. It ain't working.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Partly cloudy skies this afternoon with a high of 79. Northerly winds 8 to 15 miles an hour. Partly cloudy again tonight, lows around 55. Partly cloudy tomorrow, high temperatures reach up to 81. Chance for scattered thunderstorms Thursday and Friday. Upper 80s Thursday, mid 80s by Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Hyde.
Mark Zuckerberg's done the plan. He's a visionary future man. He's not an evil alien from outer space. He's an Earthman. Mark Zuckerberg speaks the words. He doth instruct and we doth learn. He will annihilate the past and usher us into the metaverse. The metaverse. The metaverse. Rejoice, rejoice, cause we're going into the metaverse.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry, and we once again are joined by Greg Bach, filling in for Jane That Nair today.
Hello.
What song were we just listening to?
That was a song called The Metaverse.
Who made by?
Some guy on the internet.
Oh my gosh.
His name is Andre something or other, but when I found it immediately, I'm like, it's like 2.5 minutes long, and you need to watch the video because it's art.
Is it?
Oh, it is.
It's not satire. It's art.
Oh, can it be both?
I guess it can be both.
Isn't all art satire and all satire art?
I guess, but I'm saying, like, is it visually
It's hilarious.
aesthetic or so it's fun. It's meant to be funny.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Have
we had an update on if and when Elon and Zuck are gonna fight?
God.
It was like all the rage last week, but I haven't heard if there's actually any movement happening with that.
Probably not. Wasn't it Elon who challenged Zuck? Because Zuck doesn't sound like the kind of guy who's going to say that out loud.
Yes.
And
Elon challenged Zuck, and Zuck's response was, send me location, bruh. I think I added the bra. I
I
don't
mean,
think
the
he said
thing is,
bra.
he's trying so hard to get out of his shell as a quiet boy, but I'm afraid that Zuck would murder him. Would he, I mean, I've seen Zuck train.
Yes. But I also feel like Elon, Elon's got that dad strength, the dad strength of having 11 children.
Do you think he does any? Do you think he can you right now? Do you think you called Elon Musk and be like, name all 11 of your children's name? No, not even close.
But anyways, so we've been talking. I would still love to hear from you as far as if you've thought about this, how you're going to deal with AI in the 2024 election, because it's coming. There is no sign that there is going to be any kind of regulation or self-monitoring of it. Anyone who can, any of the grassroots groups, the PACs, the campaigns that can use it likely will use it. And so what's left is like personal responsibility to not find yourself totally susceptible to everything you see and read and hear. But like some stuff has to be true. So how are we going to navigate this as a society? And what have you thought about this? Or is this the first time anyone has brought it up to you? 844-967-2789. Tony Zimmerman on the Facebook live stream says, I need to see something reported from multiple places rather than a single source, which could be faked or duped by AI. And I think that's smart. I think that's sometimes when I see something that everyone's talking about and multiple sources are talking about as a big story versus like a one-off thing that gets sent to me, that's where more like media literacy comes into play, where it's like, is there a reason that the bigger guys are not covering this? That is, they just don't think it's a big enough story. They couldn't verify it. Or why is only this one niche outlet talking about this in this way, and like trying to use some critical thinking when you don't see it more often. All right, we got someone on the phone, Greg. We got Eric from Tosa. What do you think?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say I really picked up the phone real quick to call and announce that allegedly Elon Musk's mother has called off the fight.
Really? How does that work? So
This was
Elon still
something
takes
published
directions from his
yesterday.
mom.
And that was why there was a mocking post of some kind saying something about he took directions from his mom and there will be no fight.
Wow. That's a win for moms everywhere, I think. If the richest man in the world and arguably one of the biggest trolls in the world still listens to his mom, that I think bodes well for mothers everywhere.
Thank you for the call, Eric.
Oh, really quickly though, I'd like to say on the AI.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I personally believe the key to surviving these elections, I guess, until we have some sort of regulation, which the cat's out of the bag, so will probably never occur, the key phrase for me is due diligence. When you see something, don't believe it off firsthand, don't go with it, go back and look for a second, third, fourth source, whatever it may be, because what they do, they know that all they're doing with AI is they're feeding into biases. And so people that are completely biased and roll with it are just going to jump to it and jump on it. They put a kernel of truth in there and then spin it out of control. And if it fits your narrative, they know that a certain number of people are going to do no due diligence and just run with it. And that's how it works. But due diligence destroys disinformation, I'll say.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for the call, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
And it's, again, that's why some of this is personal responsibility of your own media literacy, because we love to find nuggets and news articles that agree with our predisposition.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I'm guilty of that.
When you like instinctively want to share something, like think about the things that you're like, because it makes you laugh, it makes you feel something, it agrees with your vision of the world versus, I know because I say it all the time. And I think it's a really good thing to follow whatever social media platform you find yourself on the most, especially if you use them to take in information. So it's Instagram, it's Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Follow accounts that specifically you don't agree with. So like I follow Breitbart, I follow Daily Wire, I follow a lot of accounts that I don't like what they put out into the world, and I have like a knee-jerk reaction when I see it, but it's still good to see what they're feeding people, and like the same impulse of the things that I do follow, that I do find interesting, that do agree with my worldview, like they do that for other people. And so just notice the things that you want to share versus the things you immediately reject. And maybe that can be part of that due diligence.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to recombobulate with the one and only Dan Shafer on childcare, budget, and maybe a little where we are in Milwaukee with the vote for the sales tax. So stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup at 12:15. Wisconsin Roundtable, 1 to 3, the Todd Alba Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News Special Report. Breaking news from Washington. The Supreme Court has ruled 6-3 against Republicans in a dispute over North Carolina's congressional map. Justices say the state's highest court did not overstep its bounds when it struck down a districting plan as excessively partisan. Legal analyst Thane Rosenbaum.
The voting rights case isn't discussed as often as the others, but it has national significance because the pandemic resulted in state courts and election officials changing the rules for federal elections.
The justices rejected the broadest view of a legal theory that could have transformed elections for Congress and president by leaving state legislatures virtually unchecked by their state courts. CBS's Major Garrett is at the Supreme Court.
What it basically said is state constitutions must be respected. State courts imposing the requirements of that state constitution must also be respected, and state legislatures have rights too.
CBS News Special Report. I'm Deborah Rodriguez.
News is brought to you by Gingras Thompson and Walks, a statewide team of personal injury lawyers getting you the justice you deserve. Call 855-954-1186 for a free consultation.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Here's what you need to know in Southeast Wisconsin. Milwaukee's sales tax increase is gaining momentum as a Common Council committee approved a measure yesterday to raise the city's sales tax by 2%. The proposal will now move forward for consideration by the Common Council on July 11th. The 15-year-old accused of shooting 6 people after Milwaukee's Juneteenth celebration was already on probation for gun charges and was wearing an ankle monitor at the time. The teen is facing 10 charges, including 4 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety, after he allegedly shot 6 teenagers near MLK Drive in Chambers. Those seeking higher education in Washington County now have one less option. Under the state budget, lawmakers passed a plan to merge UW-Milwaukee-Washington County with Moraine Park Technical College. For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
The law firm of Gingras, Thompson & Walks has a track record of making life-changing positive differences for their clients. $5.25 million to a woman who suffered brain injuries and her husband passed away when struck by a drunk driver. $1 million to 3 different individuals injured by drunk drivers. $1 million settlement to a man injured in a motorcycle accident. Call Gingras, Thompson & Walks, 855-954-1186.
Calling to win, Gingras, Thompson & Walks, GTWlawyers.com.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3, The Todd Alba Show. 3 to 4, Matt Flynn Direct. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Crute. At 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show. On 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
Tired of hearing only one side of the story? Do you want news and information from people who, like you, know what it's like to work hard every day and still struggle to make ends meet? Then tune in to The Rick Smith Show every weeknight from 8 to 10 p.m. right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Be part of the conversation. Tune in, turn on, and take back the American dream. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Join the conversation with your favorite hosts or shows anytime. Follow Civic Media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Share your thoughts on our social media channels wherever you are, whenever you want.
I'm on my way, I'm making it. I've got to make it show, yeah. So much larger than life. I'm gonna watch it growing.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. We got Greg Bach back on the board today, and we are kicking off our new weekly segment. It's official instead of sporadic. Dan Shafer is going to recombobulate with us on Tuesdays at 10:30, starting today. How you doing, Dan?
Nope.
Oh, you are muted, friend. There you go.
Sorry about that. It's been a little while. I was a little discombobulated, but you helped me out there. I'm here for our
nice
weekly
branding.
recombobulation segment. I'm very excited we get this figured out. I'm going to be joining you every Tuesday. I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, it'll be a fun way to start the week as far as talking what's been going on in Milwaukee, what's been going on in the state. Probably could have been used this a little earlier considering how much has been happening in Milwaukee and the state, and trying to break down the budget cycle and the negotiations. And but we're in the final stretch of that. And so I know, let's start with something I think you and I were equally angry about, although we can't really measure it, but and may not be totally dead or over yet. But a week and a half ago, so Thursday before last, in the middle of the night, the Republicans on the Joint Finance Committee decided to totally discontinue, gut, whatever adjective or verb you want to use, the Child Care Counts program, and instead put a rotating or revolving $15 million loan instead of actually continuing with the subsidies that would and have been keeping childcare centers afloat during this crisis of childcare. Now, you've written some follow-up pieces and have talked more with some of the biggest, like the larger organizers, trying to make sure that this doesn't just die in the middle of the night. What have you heard, and what is the most up-to-date as far as, like, could there even be a strike?
Yeah, so I went to the rally a week ago that childcare providers and advocates and parents, it was actually mostly parents who were at that rally at the Capitol in Madison last Tuesday morning. Talked to a bunch of people just really to, figure out what the response was going to be after Republicans voted to gut this funding that had really been successful. It had stabilized a system that has been in decline for a long time. Obviously, childcare providers didn't have a great time during the pandemic, but this is a problem that dates back a long time. One of the providers I was talking to was saying that, we've lost 5,000 family care providers since 2007. And for the first time since then, this funding from the federal government through the pandemic relief really stabilized this program, allowed people to raise wages, keep rates low, keep a lot of these childcare facilities open. And now, the Republicans voted to gut all of the $340 million that the governor had proposed for this program. So now we're looking at a difficult situation where, some studies have said 25% of all childcare facilities will close as a result of this action. A new study last week said it would be about 2,000 childcare centers that would close as a reaction to this. One of the top organizers I talked to said within the next 6 to 9 months that she expects 1,000 childcare providers to close. The study said this would directly impact 87,000 children. And so I really think this is such a big deal. The system as it is barely hanging on. And without this funding, anything that has stabilized over the last couple of years with this funding is going to be lost. So, it's I think you look at these pandemic era programs that popped up to provide relief to people. Most of them are winding down right now, but we have a program here that worked. It was successful. It did stabilize the system. It kept these places open. And now without it, we have the budget surplus. We can fund this program without raising anyone's taxes or doing anything like that. And now the Republicans of the state are creating a childcare crisis by denying the extension of this funding.
And it's so frustrating. But there is still a chance that this week Democrats are going to introduce an amendment.
Right.
And I think there's even more action happening today, or was I reading that wrong?
Yeah, so childcare providers have been reaching out to their network. A lot of these organizers, Corrine Hendrickson with the group called We Can. She's also the owner and operator of a childcare facility in New Glarus. She's been kind of the point person on a lot of this. She's been reaching out and encouraging people to call their legislators to vote yes on this amendment, or even vote yes on having a vote for this amendment. Because my understanding is the way the process would work here is that, Democrats can introduce an amendment, but Republicans can block that amendment. And they have signaled all along that they have really no interest in taking up this funding for childcare and extending this program. And, there are reports out of the AP this morning that said Senate leadership, which I believe is planning to take up the budget vote tomorrow, is not projecting any major changes to what was passed out of the Joint Finance Committee. So, and nevertheless, there can be a vote on this amendment, and people are being encouraged to call their representatives, contact them, and ask them to vote yes on this amendment to extend childcare funding.
And you argued, you made this point, and I would be interested to hear if anyone had a good answer to it. But you pointed out, I think on Twitter, what is the business community's response to this? Because everything I know about this crisis is it is a three-pegged stool, right? There is the family's responsibility, but there's also a government's responsibility, and there's also a business responsibility, because this affects businesses directly. Have you heard anything from some of the biggest employers? Like, I've seen some op-eds prior to this written by business leaders who are acknowledging that we need to be innovative in how we fix this. I've read some one-off cases where a community came together and was able to solve this. But have you heard anything since the Thursday this all went down from kind of the private sector as far as their reaction to this at all?
Yeah, not really.
Okay.
Not really.
Great. Cool.
Which I think is so disappointing, because I think there were a few op-eds in the Journal Sentinel from people in the private sector, people in the nonprofit world who were speaking out and saying, alerting people to the reality that could come without this funding and without an investment in childcare. And I think this is going to cause people to leave the workforce if they're not able to provide and not able to find quality childcare for their children. This is going to fall particularly on women, as it always does in these types of situations. And there has really been no significant response from the business community. They're allied with the Republican Party in this state, and they don't seem interested in crossing Robin Voss and company in the state legislature, which is so disappointing. And I think, the workforce shortage that we always hear about from, the top business groups in the state, well, they're creating a much worse one now, because you're not going to be able to have people in the workforce because they'll be home with their kids or working part-time jobs or doing various different things and not being full-time participants in the economy. And I think the one study that came out last week estimated that this would amount to, I think, $232 million in lost economic impact or lost wages for parents across Wisconsin. Again, like you said, not really any response from the business community on this issue.
Great.
We are just going backwards. I mean, what we were talking about last week is like sending women back to the kitchen barefoot and pregnant. It's like, it's all they want. It's all they want.
But it's very short-sighted. And I think that's the thing. It's like ideologically, if that is how you think the order of the world should work, it's one thing, but it's also not the world we live in. And it's also, I contend that for a lot of families, and we talked about this, I think last week or even 2 weeks ago when this first came down, it's also not the reality for even decades ago. My mom worked, my grandmothers worked. Like, women have always worked and figured this out, but it's also just the combination and the fact that wages have not kept up with living costs. And so people aren't making enough to be able to afford the price hikes of what it takes to run these centers. And like, things are just broken right now. And there's actual solutions being put forward of how we can try to fix it. And yet we don't want to.
Well, and this program did work too. And I think so much of the challenge for a lot of these childcare providers is wages. And I think, as wages have gone up for a lot of other jobs in that kind of pay range, it's made it more difficult for childcare providers to retain people in the industry. The childcare counts funding raised average wages for childcare for early educators in Wisconsin from $10.66 an hour to $12.66 an hour. That was the big increase, the $2 per hour. That's still terrible. Terrible. That's still really, really bad. You talk to and meet anybody who works with kids and they're underpaid. And, particularly, these are people working with infants.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a crucial age for child development for so many reasons, and having some stability in the childcare system would just go such a long way to making a difference for families across the state. And for really no reason at all. I have not heard a good reason articulated as to why this funding should disappear at this particular moment, other than the fact that, well, it was pandemic era funding. So like other pandemic era programs, it should wind down. Well, talk to any provider or somebody who's been in the mix on trying to get legislation passed on this, and they will tell you that that is not the case. And they're adamant and passionate about that and saying that is not the case. So this is just a long running problem that we are, again, choosing to ignore and do nothing. Even as we have this $7 billion surplus, this generational opportunity to make investments in Wisconsin. And look across the border to the west, Minnesota is putting more than $750 million towards childcare. If you're starting a young family and you have the option of living in Wisconsin or Minnesota, why would any of them choose Wisconsin right now?
Well, some of us have to because we started an entire brand called As Goes Wisconsin, and I don't really want to start something new called As Goes Minnesota.
I feel like it's fertile ground.
There's no recombobulation area in Minnesota. So
exactly. All right. Well, we only have 2 minutes before we have to go to our first break. And so I want to at least set up. We're talking to Dan Shafer. This is our new weekly segment where we're going to recombobulate with Dan Shafer at 10:30 on Tuesdays. I guess I started the show yesterday with this question. And I will ask you, Dan Shafer, and then we'll talk more about it after the break. Do you think, should Tony Evers sign this budget?
I think he really has to consider vetoing the whole thing.
Really?
I think he really has to consider it. I know the governor's office has powerful line item powers and partial vetoes and all that, as he's used in the first 2 budgets that have passed. But this budget is really bad. It misses the mark on so many cases. It makes cuts when we should be making investments. I think he really has to think about vetoing it. Yeah.
So we'll talk after the break about what that would actually mean politically, logistically, because I think this is kind of the do or die week of we'll see. I think everything I've heard so far is as of yesterday, he was saying, I need to see the final budget before I would commit to anything, but it's not off the table. But also it could screw with a shared revenue deal, supposedly. And also when we come back, I want to at least touch on where Milwaukee is between the county board and the common council with approving the sales tax, because that is looming. So we are talking to Dan Shafer. Stick around. We're recombobulating on As Goes Wisconsin.
As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry and Jane Matinair.
Before I send boxes over, I have to take all of my things out. These boxes were interspersed with all sorts of things.
Who doesn't stuff their pants and their shoes into a box full of work documents to sort out later? Every time I leave a job, that's what I end up doing with my box of work papers. Bras go in there and just, and I'll sort it out later.
As Goes Wisconsin, weekdays 10 till noon on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app. The Devil's Advocates radio show.
Why a RICO charge counselor? What's that mean to the layperson?
It was written for Organized Crime, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. That's where RICO comes from. The notion that you've got an entity whose purpose is to try to perpetuate some crime. It's more than just a singular event. It is a composite of kind of a corporate conspiracy doing things toward this illegal end.
Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app. The Devil's Advocates radio show.
Gary from Sussex. Hey, Gary.
Whose birthday is it? Is it both you guys' birthday or is it or Mike's?
It's my birthday today. Mike's was 2 days ago.
I'm going to sing a happy birthday, and I'm going to sing it the right way. Happy birthday to you, Mr. President of his radio station and his sidekick.
The Devil's Advocates radio show. Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon with a high of 79. Northerly winds 8 to 15 miles an hour. Partly cloudy skies again tonight. Lows dip down to about 55. A blend of clouds and sun tomorrow. High of 81. Chance for scattered storms Thursday and Friday. Upper 80s Thursday. Mid 80s by Friday.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. We got Greg Buck on the board today, and we are recombobulating with Mr. Dan Shafer of the recombobulation area. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday at 10:30 as of today. And so with the 8 minutes that we have left, I want to touch on both where we are with the budget. So you said in the last segment that you think Governor Evers has to seriously think about vetoing what likely will be the Republicans' passed budget. What does it look like if that happens? Do you think there's political ramifications for him or the Democrats if he vetoes this and we have to do this all again in October?
I think there would be, and I think there was some details that are a little bit beyond my understanding about like administering things in the shared revenue bill or the education agreement, and how exactly that would work out if Evers did go ahead and veto this budget. But I think with the line item powers that he has, he could do things like remove the tax break for the top earners, for the wealthiest Wisconsinites that Republicans want to be giving away the surplus to, more or less. But
which is a reminder that
back
quickly,
into it.
Even if they cut that top bracket, the 7.6 to 6.5, the top earners still get a tax break based on, because they are taxed incrementally at each level. So when you cut the lower tax brackets, everyone above them is also getting that same cut, just as a reminder. Sorry to cut you off.
Right. So, but he can veto these things out of the budget, but he can't put anything back into the budget. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like this cut to UW that Evers has said he is not comfortable with. Obviously, he's talked about a veto with that, but he can't put funding back into the budget with this. So if he were to, veto the whole budget, the legislature would have to come back, I believe, this fall to present something again. But I think considering how far Republicans have gone with this budget, he has to consider it, because I think if it was just, okay, let's meet in the middle on PFAS and childcare and the UW budget and all these different things, and okay, let's target the tax cut toward the lower brackets and whatever else, I think he'd be comfortable signing it, just as he did for the last couple budget cycles. But I think considering how far Republicans have gone with how far they've pushed this budget to the right is one reason. But also, I think this is kind of the one opportunity that Evers would have to make this kind of move. He was just reelected, by a larger margin than what he was initially elected by in 2018. He's not going to feel the political ramifications the way that somebody who might be in their first term heading into some sort of reelection battle down the road might be. So is this his one opportunity to do that, to really stand firm on the budget, stand firm on the priorities that he ran on and won on? I think that has to be part of the calculation here too.
Well, and that's what I said, even for higher income Democrats or higher income independents who voted for Tony Evers, is there enough of a draw from the tax cuts that they would get in this budget to override why they voted for him in the first place and the different priorities they value? And I don't know if that's the calculation that some of the Republicans are thinking, that he's going to get pressure from his higher income voters. But I don't know if that's how their brains work.
I don't think that's the reason at all. I think it would be more about like how to implement the parts of the shared revenue and education bills that would go forward. Also things like upping pay for public
State
defenders and people in the court system. That was, I know you've talked about that on your show too. That's a really big issue. Other pay raises for state employees and things like that would have to go back to the drawing board. So I think that is probably more of the constituency that he would be contending with, and not just the self-interested high earners that have, I guess, gravitated a little bit more towards Democrats in recent years. But I think people want to expand Medicaid. People want to fund childcare. People want to have paid family leave. People want to have all of these, all of the 500 plus priorities that Republicans ripped out of this budget to get it started. Like, I think that's why people wanted to reelect the governor, because he was running on these things. And I think, the top earners who might support Democrats are not supporting him because of their own personal pocketbooks.
The $1,200 or $2,000 tax cut they might get.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we only have a couple minutes, so we'll have to save a lot of this for next week. But I guess just initial thoughts on where we are with, so far, the shared revenue bill has been signed. It is now in the hands of Milwaukee's Common Council, Milwaukee's County Board, of whether or not we're going to get a sales tax. You wrote a really great article talking about how this is not a great deal, but we have to sign it. So what have you been hearing as far as what we can expect, or kind of where it goes, at least in the next week, when you'll come back and we'll talk about this again?
Yeah, I think, there was a key committee vote that happened yesterday in the Milwaukee Common Council to kind of advance the sales tax. And there was 6 in favor, 2 abstained, but nobody voted no. So I think even the pessimistic council members like downtown Alderman Bob Bauman, who said this is never going to happen and the sky's falling, he even voted for it. So I think, and I think there was some key testimony from people, from the legislature. Somebody like Representative Evan Goyke, who voted against the proposal in the legislature, came to the Common Council and said, you should vote for this, because we can't get rid of the policy now that already passed and was signed into law. The dumb policy stuff is going to be there regardless of whether they fund the sales tax or not. So I do think, and I think there was a reason that negotiators from the city and county level made it so this would be a 2/3 vote, because I think they understood that that's a threshold that they were going to be able to get to. And so I do think this sales tax will likely pass. I've the language that I used in my column that you referenced was "live to fight another day," and I've heard that phrase come up from Alderwoman Dmitrievich and Fire Chief Lipsky. I think that's kind of where the city's at. You have to pass this and fight another day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll get into that more next week unless something else more pressing pops up between now and then, which is always a possibility in this state. But definitely, if you are not subscribed to the Recombobulation area, what are you waiting for? It's the best $5 you can spend. It's a coffee. It's a frappuccino. That's it. Dan Shafer, so happy that we're doing this and that we'll get to talk every week starting today. So we'll see you next week at 10:30 on Tuesday.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Kristen.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break and Greg. We're taking a break for the top of the hour news. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to investigative reporter from Wisconsin Watch, Phoebe Petrovic, about her series on voucher schools. Stay with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
It's easy to listen to your favorite local radio station anytime. Download the Civic Media app from the Apple or Google Play Store, then listen live or whenever you want from anywhere for free.
You're listening to The Shaw, WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266DR Waukesha, and always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. The U.S. Supreme Court with a key ruling on an election case from North Carolina. CBS's Stephen Portnoy reports it's one that figures to have an impact around the country.
The 6-3 ruling rejects the notion that the Constitution gives state legislatures the final word on how elections can be run. Citing more than 2 centuries of precedent cementing judicial review, Chief Justice John Roberts writes that state courts can step in to ensure elections are run in accordance with state constitutions. The independent state legislature theory was advanced after the 2020 election, when Donald Trump supporters said the framers gave power over balloting to state lawmakers alone.
The North Carolina battle began when the state's top court struck down a congressional districting map drawn up by Republicans. A Justice Department watchdog report out this morning says negligence and misconduct by federal jail guards led to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's behind bars death in 2019. Overseas, there's word the leader of that mercenary group that tested the Kremlin last weekend is now in Belarus. CBS's Cammie McCormick says Russia's leader put on another public display today.
President Putin, addressing the military at the Kremlin today, credited them with essentially stopping a civil war. He also recognized pilots who were killed during the insurrection and observed a moment of silence. They had tried to halt the Wagner Group's advances. The Kremlin insisted today the weekend mutiny did not have any impact on Putin's leadership.
A new report is critical of what was done about what was known about possible security threats leading up to the Capitol attack. CBS's Scott McFarland.
A 2-year investigation from Senate Democrats on the Homeland Security Committee says the FBI slow-walked and downplayed alarming intelligence received before January 6th, and that Homeland Security intelligence analysts didn't fully share the intelligence they received.
CBS News has obtained an audio tape, key evidence in the federal case against former President Trump. On it, he appears to be detailing secret documents at his New Jersey golf club.
Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him.
CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
He's going to say that he never had a document in his hand up in Bedminster, New Jersey, and that he was just waving around some papers willy-nilly.
Wall Street right now, the Dow is up 133 points. This is CBS News.
Find great hires fast with Indeed. Their end-to-end hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in the same place. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
News is brought to you by Gingras Thompson and Walks, a statewide team of personal injury lawyers getting you the justice you deserve. Call 855-954-1186 for a free consultation.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Here's what you need to know in southeast Wisconsin. Smoke from Canadian wildfires have reached the area, and it will be at its worst today and tomorrow. The alert is particularly for people with heart or lung problems, older adults, and children. Milwaukee's sales tax increase is gaining momentum as a Common Council committee approved a measure yesterday to raise the city's sales tax by 2%. The proposal will now move forward for consideration by the Common Council on July 11th. You won't get a chocolate chip cookie, but travelers have a new local option. Brittany Merlot has more.
The new air service connecting Milwaukee and the nation's capital comes about a year before Republicans had their convention here. American Airlines will start 2 daily nonstop flights between Mitchell and Reagan National Airport starting on October 5th.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
When it comes to achieving successful jury verdicts and settlements, one law firm stands out above the rest. Gingras Thompson and Walks, a $6.2 million settlement for a woman permanently paralyzed as a result of medical malpractice. $4.9 million to members of a family injured due to the negligence of a truck driver and his employer. Call Gingras Thompson and Walks today, 855-954-1186.
All into it, Gingras Thompson and Walks, GTWLawyers.com.
With one call, the Civic Media Network of stations can deliver your business's message to the entire state of Wisconsin or your hometown. Marketing plans that work for your business. One call can do it all. Civic Media, 608-819-8255.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Wisconsin's manner of funding local government is nearly singular in the country. That cheese stands alone, if you will. It hasn't been working in Milwaukee. It hasn't been working in Rhinelander. It hasn't been working in La Crosse, Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha, Racine. I don't care what you pick. It ain't working.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup.
Yes, that's awesome.
Starting at 6 a.m. Up North News, 8 to 10, The Earl Ingram Show. Mondays, 8 to 9, Under the Helmet with the Grave Digger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. 10 to 12, As Goes Wisconsin. At noon, Civic Media Network News. At 12:15, Town Call. 1 to 3.
Is that word?
Innovative.
Innovative?
Whatever. You can say it both ways.
I think it's it indicates.
Indicative? Is that the word you were looking for?
That is a good word, Kristen Bry.
A friend wouldn't make fun of somebody like for knowing a word. See, this is what I'm talking about, people. Kristen Bry does not believe in friendship.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin, the 11 o'clock hour on this very smoky Tuesday. Please don't go outside if you don't have to. Dan Shafer, he's like, well, how are you dealing with this? And I was like, oh, because I'm pregnant and maybe should be wearing a mask if I'm going to be outside. So maybe I should.
Oh, I guess he wasn't asking me.
Oh.
Whatever.
But yeah, take care of yourself because it's hard to see the sun today. And that is because of the air quality happening from the fires. But that is not stopping us from doing a show today. And I am very excited to talk to our next guest, who has been on the show before, but Phoebe Petrovic is is an investigative reporter at Wisconsin Watch who focuses on the threats to democracy and civic equality for women and LGBTQ people. And her recent series throughout May was on voucher schools. And we talked a little bit about it, I think last month or the beginning of this month, basically asking, are you comfortable with your tax dollars going to private schools that can legally discriminate against some kids? And that was what the 4 different articles highlighted. And so I'm so excited to talk to you about this, Phoebe, because this was quite the undertaking. And I guess, is that the simplest way to sum it all up, is basically that these schools can take public money and then are just not held to the same standards as the public schools are?
Yeah, that is absolutely what it is. These are private schools that take public funds and are held to standards that are entirely different and are allowed to treat LGBTQ plus and disabled students in manners that would be illegal for a public school to treat them.
So if we back up a little bit, start at the top. What should parents know? Like, when we talk about the voucher school program, it's both, is it all private schools, all religious schools, just charters, like charter schools? Like, because I know it's a complex web when you get outside of just the public schools, and then how the public money intersects with schools that accept vouchers. And so what is the range of schools that we're talking about when we talk about voucher schools in general?
Yeah, so to break it down, so you often will hear these referred to as choice schools or school choice, but that is really a broad term that includes things like charter schools or open enrollment for public schools. So we chose voucher schools as the term because that is really specific. So a voucher school is a private school that receives some amount of public money through tuition vouchers to accept students whose families have a certain level of income. So these are private schools that have elected to participate in a program that takes public money. Charter schools are public, so that's separate.
Okay.
And voucher schools have to sort of apply to be part of the program. There's 373 voucher schools in Wisconsin, which means schools that are participating in this program. There are 4 voucher programs in Wisconsin. Some are only for Milwaukee, some are only for Racine. There's also the Wisconsin sort of statewide voucher program. And then there's also the special needs scholarship program, which is specifically for students with disabilities. And I did a calculation because DPI doesn't keep this for some reason, but 95% of the schools participating in voucher programs this year are religious. So 95% of voucher schools are religious.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
So it is very much almost entirely religious schools participating in the voucher program.
Well, and what's really interesting to me is that so Wisconsin is the birthplace of the voucher school movement in the U.S. And when it was first enacted here in the 90s, it was a very limited experimental program in Milwaukee, and it was limited to secular schools. Initially, it was specifically not allowed to include private religious schools. And of course, as the program has expanded and particularly the GOP has sort of pushed its expansion and wider adoption, they've removed some of those requirements. Some of the other requirements were that you had to have attended public schools before you tried to go for vouchers. But now there are tons of voucher students who have never set foot in a public school. They've only ever been taking vouchers to attend private schools. So limitations like that have gone away as the program has expanded, one of the big ones being that now religious schools can participate and overwhelmingly dominate the space.
And so then how much choice do parents have? So if you're going to choose, like you said, there is choice schools, which are public. There's a voucher program that you can go to private schools. Is it a lottery system, or is it like, I qualify for a voucher and I have done my research and this is the voucher school I want to send my kid to? Or are you kind of funneled into something where this is your option?
Yeah, so I don't know I can't speak to the specific intricacies of the different programs because I know that it varies depending on the program, but basically what it is the law sets out really specific requirements for eligibility. So it's like age, your attendance in the previous year, how much income your family makes, and that varies depending on the program. So like what percentage of the poverty line are you, and then residency. And so in some of the programs, then you apply and the school basically has to take you if they have the seats. I think in perhaps the Wisconsin statewide program, that's the one where it's always just a random lottery to see who gets a spot in whatever school. And then in others, like if there are more voucher students than there are seats for, or potential voucher students than there are seats for, there'll have to be a random drawing to see who gets a seat. But you ultimately can, you can try to request the school of your choice. It just depends on whether or not they will accept you based on, whether you're eligible and then whether there are sufficient requirements, or excuse me, sufficient seats. The thing that you've mentioned, like how much choice do parents have? You can choose to try to attend the school that you want your child to attend. That's sort of in the same way that you can sort of apply to any college that you want, and it's a matter of whether they'll take you. The difference is, this comes up especially for disabled students, is that one of the advocates that I spoke to was like, you think that you as a parent have the choice, but when you attend a school that's a private voucher school where you have waived your federal protections to attend this school, if there's some problem or conflict, they might, ultimately just kick you out, and then you don't have a lot of recourse. And that's where this like question of choice comes in.
Yeah, and that's why I was kind of setting that up. We're talking to Phoebe Petrovic, who is investigative reporter at Wisconsin Watch, and talking about her series of kind of I guess not uncovering, because it is the law, but as far as the leeway that some of these voucher schools are taking to have discriminatory policies against both LGBTQ students and students with disabilities. And it's legal because they don't have to follow the same protections that publicly funded schools do, despite the fact that they're taking public funds. And so, I asked the question as far as how much choice you have, because if it's kind of a lottery system and you're kind of set up to feel like, well, we're lucky that we got in, and then you're faced with your young child who goes through puberty, comes out, transitions, and all of a sudden you're faced with a different reality. And so can you talk more about, at least let's start with the LGBTQ discrimination that you found in reporting this?
Yeah, so this really ran the gamut. So I looked at, for context, I looked at a third of the voucher schools in Wisconsin. I would have liked to have looked at all of them, but I didn't have time.
Yeah.
And we found that nearly half of them, 4 out of 10, had policies or statements that were discriminatory towards LGBTQ students. Every single one of these was Christian, mostly Lutheran and Catholic, but some other denominations. And all of them cited religious principles for their LGBTQ discrimination. Some of these were a simple statement of faith that would say things like there are only 2 God-given immutable genders and it's a sin to be gay or trans. And then that was it. They didn't have anything sort of codified in policy about how they would like enact those statements of belief. And then some were really explicit, saying we will discipline you or we might expel you for being gay or trans. Others said that they refused to use the pronoun or chosen name of a transgender student, or they would deny them access to transition-related medication or to facilities that aligned with their gender identity. And I also found a couple of select instances where schools had sort of additional voucher admissions policies that were explicitly anti-LGBTQ when it came to voucher students, which that appears to be illegal. The important thing is that you're not allowed under Wisconsin state law to discriminate against LGBTQ students or disabled students in admissions. But once a student is enrolled, CPI says school policies apply. And so it's perfectly legal to say, you're trans, we don't agree with that, you need to leave.
Phoebe, I had a question for you really quick. If I heard somewhere from friends who are, in the same, are teachers, if they accept a kid into the school and they take the money and they say, well, you are trans or you are gay and that's against our policies, we are kicking you out, they get to keep all of that money, correct?
For that semester,
yeah.
Basically, if they've already received the money. So the way that it works is that you basically get I think it's 4 payments a year. The voucher students or the voucher schools get 4 payments a year, but it's based off of the head count of voucher students from the beginning of the first semester and the beginning of the second semester. So theoretically, if someone is kept for the head count, which determines the money that the school will get for that semester, and then they're kicked out afterwards from, like, I don't want to misstate about when the payment is offered, but like theoretically for a couple of months in that semester, that school gets to keep the money and the kid is gone. And then it takes a while for the public school to then get that money back.
So then separately, I want to address this quickly because we only have 2 minutes before we go to the break, and then we can talk about it more on the other side. But with children who have disabilities, it's obviously not a religious argument or statement that they're saying why this is how our handbook is. It's more of an accommodation thing where they just basically say, we can't accommodate this student and that's it.
Yeah, broadly, the laws only require minor adjustments to meet disabled students' needs. And so if the school says, this requires more than minor adjustments, they legally don't have the obligation to take those students. And so this often comes down to accommodation or capacity, or they'll say, look, we're a small school, we've got 30 kids, like, what are we supposed to do?
Got it. All right. Well, I want to talk more about this, how prevalent it is. It's one thing that they can do it. How often are they doing it? Our guest is Phoebe Petrovic, who is an investigative reporter for Wisconsin Watch. We're talking about voucher schools. Stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
The law firm of Gingras, Thompson & Walks has a track record of making life-changing positive differences for their clients. $5.25 million to a woman who suffered brain injuries and her husband passed away when struck by a drunk driver. $1 million to 3 different individuals injured by drunk drivers. $1 million settlement to a man injured in a motorcycle accident. Call Gingras, Thompson & Walks, 855-954-1186.
All in Gingras, Thompson & Walks, GTWlawyers.com.
Tired of hearing only one side of the story? Do you want news and information from people who, like you, know what it's like to work hard every day and still struggle to make ends meet? Then tune in to The Rick Smith Show every weeknight from 8 to 10 p.m. right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Be part of the conversation. Tune in, turn on, and take back the American dream. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry and Jane Matinaire.
Before I send boxes over, I have to take all of my things out. These boxes were interspersed with all sorts of things.
Who doesn't stuff their pants and their shoes into a box full of work documents to sort out later? Every time I leave a job, that's what I end up doing with my box of work papers. Bras go in there and just, and I'll sort it out later.
As Goes Wisconsin, weekdays 10 till noon on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon with a high of 79. Northerly winds 8 to 15 miles an hour. Partly cloudy skies again tonight. Lows dip down to about 55. A blend of clouds and sun tomorrow. High of 81. Chance for scattered storms Thursday and Friday. Upper 80s Thursday. Mid 80s by Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 66 degrees.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. We got Greg Bach with the good tunes on the board today, and we are talking to Phoebe Petrovic, who is an investigative reporter at Wisconsin Watch, about her series from May, diving into voucher schools, which take public funds and then can legally discriminate against LGBTQ kids and even kids with disabilities. And that on its face does not seem fair or good considering the standards that we hold public schools too. But Phoebe, there's one thing that they can do it. How often is this actually happening? Because I know in your story you highlighted a couple stories where it did happen, but like, did you come across many stories of people who were actually expelled or threatened with expulsion?
Yeah, so I guess the short answer is we don't know, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of these, if this happens to students, they might suffer in silence. So one of the, and it depends on whether your family is supportive of you. I will say in the disability side, a Disability Rights Wisconsin advocate said that she regularly fields calls from parents saying, my kid with disabilities is in the school. They say that they can't accommodate them, or that, that there's an issue with their behavior and they're trying to kick us out. What's our recourse? And, often the advocate has to say nothing, unfortunately, because you waived all of your affirmative, or you waived most of your robust affirmative protections when you left the public school system for one of these voucher programs. On the LGBTQ side, I spoke with someone who was closeted and gay in his all through high school and wanted to come out in his valedictorian speech. His name is Nat Worth, excuse me. And, he talked about he experienced things while he was an enrolled student and didn't come out, and, sort of suffered in silence because it wouldn't have been safe for him, or he wanted to make sure, that he came out after he was 18 and was able to, legally refuse conversion therapy if that's something that people tried to push on him. So, it's really, we don't quite know. I did receive, a couple of dozen complaints from the disability side and the LGBTQ side that DPI received, where people would write to DPI and say, hey, this is happening. This feels like discrimination. Can you do something? And they would have to say, I'm sorry, we can't, because these are enrolled students and we have no authority to protect enrolled students who are LGBTQ or disabled from discrimination.
What's wild to me is that your stories were dropping basically around the same time as we've now extended and increased funding for voucher schools. And so I guess in general, or I guess on the good and the bad, what has the reaction been since the different stories came out in May?
Yeah. And that was totally an accident. Like it meant that they were more kind of news. They were relevant, but we've been working on this for a while.
Oh yeah. No, I know. I wouldn't mean that they were causal, but it's like, I feel like my perception was like these dropped, which felt to me like a big deal, and then to like have the follow-up be, but they're getting more money. I was like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I can say that we got pushback from people in the school choice movement, even before the stories published, when they had just heard about our reporting really early on. And I think this is borne out by the way that people have responded. The stories seem to really anger this network of right-wing think tanks and law firms in Wisconsin that have invested significant money in vouchers. So they seem to be very upset, and now the state, Governor Evers has signed this sort of funding boost, and they're calling it a win. So, on that side, folks were really angry, but, our position was, this is important information that people need to know about. I don't think a lot of people understand that this is what the voucher program entails, and this is what our taxpayer dollars are funding, and we should consider all aspects of the program when we consider whether or not we want to fund it, to continue funding it or to fund it more. I got some really heartfelt notes from students at some of these schools who said basically like, thank you for seeing me and speaking to what I'm experiencing. One of those is really interesting. It was actually someone who had graduated from a school I featured in the 70s and said, I was a closeted lesbian at my time there. It was really hard. I'm sad to see that the school hasn't changed, but please pass along to these students that I'm so proud of them. And like, it does get better. And got some interesting notes too from students at some of the schools I featured saying, well, we have freedom of speech and we have freedom of religion, so we can do what we want. And our response to that was like, our story is simply saying, focusing on private schools that get public funding, and how we as taxpayers are subsidizing treatment that would be illegal in the public school context. So we didn't touch, private schools that are entirely private and independent in what they do. This was public subsidization. So it really sort of ran the gamut, I would say.
And do you feel like it can potentially be the starting point of any momentum of people who want to look at this further and see what more protections, or as far as who qualifies, or kind of taking it to the logical next step for people who are upset that your money would go to a school that doesn't have to follow the same protections as public schools? Have you heard any rumblings of people having inspiration from that to kind of challenge the status quo?
I mean, I certainly saw several Democratic lawmakers who seemed pretty riled up about it. But I think probably this comes down to, like many things in Wisconsin, that we have an extraordinarily gerrymandered legislature. The
we know
side that, perhaps the side that is perhaps against this doesn't have the votes right now. I will say, I've spoken to advocates who say this discrimination is a feature and not a bug of the voucher system. And it's also something that the legislature has been confronted with several times in the past. There were 3 bills that would have
unfortunately, Phoebe, I got to cut you off because we have 10 seconds to the break. But Phoebe Petrovic, thank you so much for writing this. Thank you for spending time. I can't wait to have you back and see what you work on next. You are a wonderful reporter. So thank you for uncovering this for so many of us who did not know it was a thing. Thank you so much for writing this. Thank you for spending time. I can't wait to have you back and see what you work on next. You are a wonderful.
This summer, 5:40 a.m. WAUK has a new lineup. 4 to 6, The Devil's Advocates with Dom and Cruz. 6 to 7, The Maggie Dawn Show on 5:40 a.m. WAUK.
CBS News special report. The U.S. Supreme Court backs state court efforts to review what lawmakers decide about elections and voting districts. CBS News election law contributor David Becker says it was a 6-3 ruling on a case from North Carolina.
We've got a situation where a state legislature drew a map, and the state Supreme Court held that map violated the state's law. And the U.S. Supreme Court did something, although it's a momentous decision, it actually upholds nearly 250 years of the status quo, which is that the state court can do that.
Republicans have pushed to give state legislatures sole power since Donald Trump's 2020 loss. And CBS's Major Garrett reports some expected this high court might go along.
There was an assumption that this conservative Supreme Court would be indifferent or possibly hostile to underlying understandings and applications of the Voting Rights Act.
CBS News special report. I'm Steve Kathan.
News is brought to you by Gingras Thompson and Walks, a statewide team of personal injury lawyers getting you the justice you deserve. Call 855-954-1186 for a free consultation.
For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles. Here's what you need to know in southeast Wisconsin. Wildfire smoke has spread to Waukesha and Milwaukee, resulting in an air quality advisory in eastern Wisconsin. The smoke is expected to be at its worst today and tomorrow, with people with heart or lung disease, older adults, and children being most affected. It's advised to limit outdoor activities during the alert. Bold action is needed to sustain growth. That was one of the messages out of Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson's State of the City address yesterday. Johnson highlighted achievements in the local economy while acknowledging concerns about crime and reckless driving.
There's no magic solution to urban crime and violence. The causes are complex. The solutions are complex too.
The address also touched on supporting changes in gun laws and support for a sales tax. For Civic Media News, I'm Stuart J. Waddles.
When it comes to achieving successful jury verdicts and settlements, one law firm stands out above the rest. Gingras Thompson and Walks, a $6.2 million settlement for a woman permanently paralyzed as a result of medical malpractice. $4.9 million to members of a family injured due to the negligence of a truck driver and his employer. Call Gingras Thompson and Walks today, 855-954-1186.
All into it, Gingras Thompson and Walks, GTWlawyers.com.
Hey, this is Lindsay Kindred at 540 WAUK The Shaw. At Civic Media, we love our local communities and want to share your stories. Submit your local event and we'll let our listeners know. Email me, Lindsay Kindred, at info@civicmedia.us. That's info@civicmedia.us.
From the kennel to the coop, whatever the season, Fleet Farm has everything to keep your animals happy and healthy. From training your pup to sit season to mastering those retrieval skills season. From clipping your horse for competition season to keeping the backyard birds well-fed season. And of course, loving your pets like family season. There's a reason people say, if Fleet Farm doesn't have it, you don't need it. Because we have it all. Fleet Farm, built for real life.
Ensure yourself a brighter future with help from insurance agent Stephanie Morales. Stephanie's passion is educating families on affordable, sufficient coverage, along with using your insurance for emergencies to major purchases while you're alive. Book a free insurance consultation with Stephanie Morales today at stephaniemorales.net or call 414-791-0124. That's 414-791-0124. Call today to begin that brighter future. Stephanie Morales Insurance. Creating a legacy.
It's not My grandma says everybody can have a special dream. A little time for imagining who you might want to be. My grandpa says everybody can have a special place. So let's dream together. Wish together and be someone new today. I want to be a mermaid with golden hair, riding dolphins to the shore. I want to be a rainbow fish that swims.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. Greg Bach is on the board today. Greg, what do you think is more coveted by children when it comes to the fantasy creatures of a unicorn versus a mermaid?
Oh my good gravy.
I know with my niece, it's pretty even.
I mean, I would say I'd probably, because I'd probably want to be a mermaid because I love swimming.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see you as a merman.
I love a strong merman.
Well, I ask because did you know that you can see mermaids?
What?
You can actually see mermaids and go see them like at the Discovery World Aquarium. In fact, you can see our next guest sometimes at the Discovery World Aquarium, Mermaid Echo, also known as Echo. Welcome to the
morning.
show.
Good morning. Good
How are
morning.
you?
I'm so good. I have heard basically every mermaid related song in the world, and Greg, I have not heard that one. So I'm impressed.
I'm not kidding you. Like I looked mermaid songs and it was basically The Little Mermaid entirely.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well done.
So,
that was a fun song.
Echo is an internationally award-winning educator and entertainer who's been running Mermaid Echo Entertainment since 2016. And this is an audio medium. So it's hard because we met at a TikTok like local thing in Milwaukee. I started following your account and seeing the transformation you, Echo, go into being Mermaid Echo. You look like a cartoon almost, and like the makeup you put on and what you can do underwater between your movement and how you hold your breath and everything. It's such a transformation. But I guess, how would you describe to someone who is listening right now what it is you do as a mermaid entertainer?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, if you can imagine a giant tail that is purple and teal with sparkly, shining scales all over it, that's her tail. It also features like a big, bright white swirl around the ankles, which kind of is a callback to how I got started way back in 2012. I had ankle surgery and I started mermaiding to kind of recover from that injury. So that's what the swirl represents. She wears purple seashells just like Ariel and has beautiful, dusty lavender purple hair with all kinds of shells and crowns and, flowers and starfish stuck in her hair. So that's what she looks like. And she also has big, bright lashes and bright purple lips. And underwater, what we do is promote aquatic conservation through games and trivia questions. And we try to engage kids with the mermaid through aquatic conservation. So it's a really fun time. And they always walk away learning something, I hope. But also, it's just really magical to watch a mermaid swimming underwater.
Absolutely. And so so you kind of alluded to it just now. So you had an ankle surgery, but because until I met you, I didn't know that people could just do this and you have your job, because you're part educator and activist, but also part entertainer, and you've found a way to blend the two. And how did you even stumble upon this as like something you could do?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, we call it edutainment, education and entertainment all in one. So way back when I was scrolling through the interwebs and I found a website called the Mern Network, and I describe it as Facebook, but for merfolk. And I came across Hannah Mermaid, who was one of the OG mermaids out there, and she was using her tail to promote aquatic conservation. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect for kids. And so I found another mermaid named Mermaid Reina who was selling some books on how to get started. So I bought all of her books. I watched all of her YouTube tutorials. And the next summer, I launched the business at 17 years old. And every weekend, my calendar was booked up. So I haven't had time to breathe since then, like stop and pause, because it's so popular. And people don't know about it, which surprises me because everyone loves mermaids. Everyone I talk
loves
to
mermaids.
is so on board with this. So I'm so glad that now it's becoming more and more popular.
And so, what is the gamut of activities that you do as Mermaid Echo? Because it's like it's everything from small private events and parties to, like I said, you've performed at Discovery World.
Yes. Yep. I like to say every event is better with a mermaid. If you can dream it, I can do it. So I've done everything from I've been a clue in an amazing race once. That was crazy. I like gave the clue. I've
Really?
also that was
Wait,
one of my
tell a
weirder
little-
gigs.
Where were you when they had to come find you to get the clue? And how long did you have to hang out for all of the different contestants to find you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was sitting underneath a Stone Arch Bridge in Minneapolis. This was like one of my first gigs. And I was like, oh, I guess this is my future, is just weird, strange jobs because I need money, you know? So I said, yes, of course. And I hung out under the Stone Arch Bridge. We hung around for maybe 3 hours, and the contestants they did not care about the mermaid. They were like, just give me the clue. Like, we got to go. And that was the first and only time I've ever had that experience in costume, is people not caring that they were meeting a mermaid. It was very strange for a first gig.
So then, but beyond random reality TV shows, what else do you like? What else does this usually include?
I've done weddings. I do a lot of like brand promotion for all kinds of different products, like hair care, skin care. Rum is a popular one that people reach out to me about, which is fun. I did a goth prom once with the theme was Under the Sea, an adult goth prom in Madison. That was fun. It was a live photo opportunity. But my favorite events are, of course, conservation education focused gigs. So, and especially the aquarium shows that's my big passion right now. And I always try to tie in conservation into every event I do.
And I think I highly recommend following Echo on social media and seeing what it is Mermaid Echoes is she, but she does when she's underwater, in that watching you, because it's not just you're in a pool at a kid's birthday party. You are in the aquarium, and there's, I think, probably one of your videos on TikTok that has the most views is when one of the fish just
Carl,
just decided to come say hi and was like kind of in the wig and like up in your face, and you lightly give him a little pet and send him on his way.
Yes.
I would freak out if a
Most
kid
people
fish
would.
was in my face. And so what kind of training does it take to be able to hold your breath like that, stay cool under pressure? There's another video that you have when you are working with like what looks like a bubble, but I think it's like a glass ball. And so how do you get to this point to be able to be this much of a professional in the way that you perform? And because it's truly, you should follow, it's just at Mermaid Echo, right?
Yeah, at Mermaid Echo. Yeah. Oh, you're so sweet. You're blowing
I'm
so much,
serious. I'm
looking
so
at the
much
website
smoke in my
right
head.
now.
I don't need any more ego, do I? So very kind of you. My head's already pretty big. No, but you're right. It does take a lot of training, and that's the biggest part of my job as a PADI mermaid instructor trainer is teaching folks how they can do this safely and respectfully and responsibly underwater. Because when you're holding your breath at length, at depth, you are endangering your livelihood and also the livelihood of all of the coworkers you're in the tank with. And yes, I call my fish fish, my coworkers. They are my best friends and wonderful, wonderful colleagues to have. And that was Carl. Carl has what are called barbels. He is a lake sturgeon. And so he has barbels, which are little whiskers that stick out of his mouth. And that will tell him when there's something near him that he can eat. And then he'll shoot his detachable jaw down and suck up whatever it is. So he had felt a portion of my wig brush against one of his barbels, and he thought it was a piece of food. So he gave me a real big smooch on the head, and it felt a little bit like a punch in the head. They're very strong creatures. I mean, this guy's about 4 foot long, but they don't have teeth, completely harmless. And Carl is my best friend. He is so lovely. He actually was given to the aquarium for rehabilitation because he was kept by someone who kept him in too small of a tank, and you can recognize him because he has little stunted side fins. So you can know who Carl is, and he is the most friendly and the kindest and comes up to me every show. Every single one of them has personality. A lot of people think fish are, brainless, the 2-second memories. That's not true at all. Fish are sentient. Sturgeon are just like little puppies. They have about the same attention span and brain ability as a dog or a pet, maybe a dumb dog, maybe. But yeah.
I've met some of those.
Yeah.
Still lovable.
Well, maybe like a terrier. No, I'm kidding. I love terriers.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Fish are my creatures, not dogs. But yeah. So I do use a contact juggling ball. It's made of acrylic, not glass. We don't take glass in the aquarium. It's just a lot of training, a lot of practice, and most importantly, learning from the pros. So I sit down with the aquarist a lot and I go, hey, what do I need to know? What equipment can I use in the tank? What can I not do? What is safe? What isn't safe? And practice. And if anyone is interested in doing this, I highly encourage them to get some professional free dive or mermaid training through Patty. So that's kind of how I do the quick overview breakdown of how I know what to do.
Absolutely.
A lot of practice.
So then, but also your passion, as you said, is environmental activism, environmental conservation, and teaching, especially talking to kids about it. And so sometimes it's purely entertainment, but as much like you said, your favorite is when you can actually talk to the kids. And so what does that look like when you're in character, but talking about more than your buddy flounder?
Yes. Yeah. So in the aquarium, I can't see or hear anything. So I write the script and then we just start the show, and we just have a very good rapport and trust on how the timing of the show works. But I'm not the one talking to the kids, right? I'm under the water. So
when kids go to like Discovery World, there's an audio playing while you're. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Well,
Okay.
So I have a team of about 5 people that are there doing the show with me. You are seeing Echo perform and then hearing an aquarist do the script. So I write the script and work with the aquarist to promote whatever we're promoting that month. Sometimes it's microplastic, sometimes it's like water access. I think that's what it was last month. Stuff like that, freshwater topics. And then they will go through the script with the kids. So there's like games that we play. But yeah, you're listening to someone talk through the show and play games with you and kind of teach you about whatever Echo is teaching you. But I'm just kind of trusting them that we're on the same part on the script based on what we've practiced and everything like that. So you're definitely still learning. It's definitely a show, and she does an amazing job. Usually who I work with is Alexis at Discovery World. Shout out, Alexis. You're phenomenal. And we put on a good show, but not always am I under the surface. Like you said, sometimes I am Echo above the surface, and then I teach a story about microplastic pollution from the character of Echo verbally to the kids as well.
So then also in your real life, this is also part of you write curriculum. This is also part of what you want to be doing beyond just your mermaid life, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to school as a master's student right now at the School of Freshwater Sciences at UW Milwaukee. I'll be graduating in December, and I study ichthyology, limnology, and hydrology, everything to do with freshwater sciences. And I hope to kind of give myself a scientific base to the science communication base that I already had with my degree in journalism from Madison. So I worked as a science communicator for the DNR for a while, as well as some other magazines and things like that. And I just realized I wanted to be the scientist. And I also realized that I was kind of lacking the scientific education that I needed in order to truly teach kids about how they can be aquatic stewards. So that's why I decided to enroll in the School at Freshwater Sciences. And it's so exciting. I love it. I love my classes. I'm learning so much. It's also really hard, but I'm surviving.
The barrier to entry for I always think, I was like, when do I go back to school? And it's like, God, that sounds really hard to go back to studying and taking tests and writing papers and being like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so what is the bigger, like, is the goal, at least for now, because obviously it changes, to continue to blend it all together and do everything you're learning in your master's program right now with mermaiding and just keep growing it as edutainment?
Yes, my goal is to bring the shows that I'm doing in the aquatic conservation curriculum that I write to kids who don't have access to a ticketed event. I want to build a tank and have a traveling mermaid tank show around the Midwest that will come to schools that maybe are in lower income or less affluent areas and do the show for them for free. Right now, we have a monetary barrier to that. The tank is $10,000. So if anyone believes in this cause, and wants to donate, let me
Get
know.
that GoFundMe up.
Yeah, I know, right? So that's my next step. Yeah, it's a traveling tank show for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. Well, in the minute that we have left, where can people see your next show?
All right, July 15th, Discovery World shows at 11 and 12:30. It is going to be our biggest production yet. We are doing a full-on underwater play. No one has ever done it before. So come see us. Come have a fun time with Echo.
Oh, that's so. I don't think I can go to Discovery World without a child, so I'm gonna have to take my niece.
Yes, you can.
I think you can. Okay.
Yes, you can. So many adults come see my shows.
Great.
I love it.
I can't wait to see it. All right, Mermaid Echo. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for telling us about everything you do. Definitely go find at Mermaid Echo on social media. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Have a
much for
great
having
day.
me. Yeah, you too.
All right,
Thanks.
we're gonna take one more break and then wrap up the show. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we're gonna take one more break and then wrap up the show. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
The law firm of Jingris, Thompson & Wux has a track record of making life-changing positive differences for their clients. $5.25 million to a woman who suffered brain injuries and her husband passed away when struck by a drunk driver. $1 million to 3 different individuals injured by drunk drivers. $1 million settlement to a man injured in a motorcycle accident. Call Jingris, Thompson & Wux, 855-954-1186.
All into it, Gingras, Thompson and Wux, GTWlawyers.com.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Why a RICO charge counselor? What's that mean to the layperson?
It was written for Organized Crime, Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act. That's where RICO comes from. The notion that you've got an entity whose purpose is to try to perpetuate some crime. It's more than just a singular event. It is a composite of kind of a corporate conspiracy doing things toward this illegal end.
Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local civic media radio station and on the app. The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Gary from Sussex. Hey, Gary.
Whose birthday is it? Is it both you guys' birthday or is it Dom's or Mike's?
It's my birthday today. Mike's was 2 days ago.
I'm going to sing a happy birthday, and I'm going to sing it the right way. Happy birthday to you, Mr. President of his radio station and his sidekick.
The Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Weekday afternoons from 4 until 6 on your local civic media radio station and on the app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. A blend of clouds and sun this afternoon with daytime highs approaching 79. Northerly winds 8 to 15 miles an hour. Partly cloudy skies again tonight. Lows level off around 55. High temperatures reach up to 81. Tomorrow, a mix of clouds and sun. Upper 80s Thursday, mid 80s by Friday. For Civic Media, I'm
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. He is Greg Bach. Did you have a theme for today's music, Greg? Or did you just pick things as you
I picked
it came to you?
I looked at the overview of today's schedule and I was just like, what are the songs that really fit these themes? And I'm really happy that Mermaid Echo had never heard that song before. because I was like literally looking. And then there was another one that was by the Florence and the Machine. I was looking through the lyrics. I'm like, nope, cannot play that song.
Oh, why?
Has some questionable lyrics,
Mm.
but just a little too over the top for.
Wait, which Florence and the Machine song is about a mermaid?
I don't remember right now.
Go look.
Yeah.
One of the best concerts. I've seen her twice.
Really?
She's unbelievable.
Oh, very good. Love it.
I still can't answer this question. And I think they went to the same conservatory.
Yeah.
But when you think of Florence Henderson, right?
Yeah.
Is that her last name?
No, that's you're thinking.
That's
the mom
Brady
from Brady
Bunch.
Bunch.
What's Florence's last name?
I thought it was Machine.
It's not Machine. I'm totally blanking. I'm gonna blame the baby. She went to the same conservatory as Adele.
Welch.
Thank you. And I've always wondered, because they have such different voices. Like, how would you ever ask who is a better singer of those two? Because they both have I've seen both of those women in concert, and they are two artists that sound better in person than on the album.
Yeah. They're powerhouses.
But very, very different voices. And now I'm curious of what her mermaid song
Could you
was.
imagine a duet between them? Like just a cappella duet of any song they have?
And it'd be interesting to see if their voices complement each other, though.
Yeah.
Because I saw a couple different duets with Kelly Clarkson and Pink.
Yeah.
Which was incredible.
Oh my gosh.
Pink was on Kelly Clarkson's show, and they just kind of sang a cappella some of Pink's songs.
Yeah.
And it was so good. And so I feel like those voices complement each other, but it'd be interesting to see with the different styles. I'm sure they would make it work. There's like two of the best artists in the world.
This is the world of haters we live in too, by the way. I was watching something. It was a clip of Pink doing her performance. Now, anyone listening out there who doesn't know what Pink does in her live concerts, she basically does acrobatics. She does like Cirque du Soleil, like huge.
Have you been to a Pink concert?
I've never been to one. I've seen them. I've seen one live, like television.
Her documentary or whatever.
I mean, you are getting a Las Vegas show coming to your town essentially, and we were sitting there and watching, and someone from the back just was like, "Oh yeah, that's what she has to do because she doesn't have any talent." I'm like, you are. First of all, if Pink just sat on a chair and sang with a guitar, people would sell out arenas for her. The fact that she's adding in a layer of entertainment that you don't get with any other concert, and I'm sorry, you don't think either of those things are talents? What's wrong with people?
But
Kristen?
It's also, to me, because it's one thing when it comes to breaking into the entertainment business that some people, dumb luck, they get a break. But if you don't have talent, you do not last.
No.
It just, there is no longevity for people who don't have the work ethic, don't have the talent, and also don't have the luck, right? Yeah. But this woman has been in the pop culture scene since I was in middle school.
So like the 90s?
Yeah. So like I think her first kind of big single was like late 90s.
Yeah.
And she's still selling out tours all over the world.
In arenas.
I'm pretty sure she has a little bit of talent.
No talent whatsoever. Sorry, Kristen. Just a talentless hack. That old Sally Pink.
Don't quit the acrobats.
Yeah. Old Florence Henderson. They got nothing on Pink.
All right. Well, I'm trying to think. What I feel like, did any news break while we were on air?
The Supreme Court voted, I think it was 5-4 or 6-3. I think it was 6-3 against, I believe it was North Carolina and their maps.
What? Really?
Yeah, that just came over that was while we were, let's see here.
What breaking news did we miss while we were talking to a mermaid? How often do you get to say that?
Supreme Court rules against North Carolina Republicans over election law theory.
Oh, so that was Harper versus Moore.
Yeah.
That is really good.
Yeah.
So that is actually a really, really good outcome, because I know going into the hearings last fall, every legal scholar, including we had Jim Santel from Morning Cannolis, which you can hear on Saturdays from 9 to 11 across the Civic Media Network, former attorney, U.S. attorney. He came on the show to explain, like, this would be really, really bad. This would be really, really bad. And so the fact that, and it seemed like when the hearings happened that there was a fair amount of pushback, even from some of the conservative justices. But it's good to hear that they did rule in that the state court didn't overstep their authority.
I'm still kind of mad at the Supreme Court. I'm still kind of mad at them. They're not invited at Thanksgiving this year. Sorry.
I feel like they came out with there was a different, I saw on Twitter. I think there was also a case that they decided with Norfolk Southern. So I know on Friday this week, we are going to have a Supreme Court legal expert from UW-Madison join us to talk about, because this is basically the week. So all of the we're holding our breath on affirmative action, student loans, the bigger cases, Harper versus Moore, that we heard, the hearings happened late last year, and now this is the last week that they can come down with their rulings. So by the end of this week, there should be a fair amount to talk about as far as what does it all mean?
What does it all mean?
And so I will have to read more before I start talking out of the side of my mouth
and not know. Show so bad.
On Friday?
Yeah, I probably won't be here because
you have other jobs you have to attend to.
Because I'm such a dork.
How do you feel about day 2?
Oh, you know what? Honestly, I'm feeling good. You've made it very easy. All the help between. Shout out to Calvin, one of our other producers, who's helped me a lot here during my training. Shout out, of course, to Jane Matinair. Shout out to Kristen Bry and everyone here at Civic Media. Seriously, it's been a delight to do this, and I'm happy to be a part of the team. And it is my pleasure to be here. And I like pushing the buttons and being on the old ones and twos.
The ones and twos. Add this to what is all the rundown of different jobs you've had. You've been a barber. You've now been a radio producer.
Yep. Brewery tour guide, stand-up comedian, comedy club owner, paperboy. There's just too many to put out there, Fred.
That's a pretty wide variety, even with those 6. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that will about do it for us today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Greg will be here. Jane will probably be here.
Yeah, we'll all be.
But if not, you'll be back on the board.
Friends
doing a great
together.
job. Thank you for texting. Thank you for calling. Thank you to our guests. Thank you for being part of the show. We'll be back tomorrow. This is As Goes Wisconsin.